Your website doesn't define your brand. Your logo doesn't define your brand. Every interaction you have with your audience, whether it's a future client user or an existing user or client, it all feeds into your brand reputation, how people feel about you, how people talk about you when you're not there. All these types of things. Ultimately, it's creating a perception.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to From the Ground Up. Oh, wait. It's not From the Ground Up. It's the advice business. We're recording before the actual brand switched to the new podcast name. I'm also wearing old swag, if you can see it, old backdrop, but things have changed. It's weird.
Things have
This
changed.
is like this.
Yes.
When we listen to this, we'll be looking back at the past. We've made some changes from a brand perspective in terms of the name, the look and feel, swag, which of course is the most important. That's all I really cared about. Getting those stickers in the mail was like the best day. It's Christmas morning for me. Got it right on my laptop. But brand is important. Brand helps tell the story of what you're trying to accomplish as a business. And I'm excited because I think we have a guest today that can talk about that and its importance and how to bring it to life and what it means in your business. So Kelsey, introduce our guest today.
Yes, very excited to do so. So our guest is John Scianna. Welcome, John. Thank you for joining us. John is from Objective Brand, they're the ones responsible for our rebrand, which is why we've gotten to know John quite a bit, and we're excited to talk about this topic with you, John. Welcome.
Yeah, happy to be here.
We are excited to have you. We are very excited. So we want to talk about our rebrand and like learnings and takeaways and how we can apply this to advisory businesses or how financial advisors can apply this to their businesses. But before we do, could you just share a little background about you, your work in the industry, but also Objective Brand?
Yeah, absolutely. This is I always struggle with how short do I make this story to add enough color. I think one of the most important things
John, start from the day you were born.
Yeah.
Just go all the way back to the beginning.
We will not cut you off.
Well, I think one of the things I like to call out is that I am a designer by trade. I went to school for design. I spent the first several years of my career as a graphic designer, web designer, all things design. It wasn't until a little bit later I started to become more and more interested in marketing. I'd always had some affinity for it. I started my first business out of college, which failed after a year. But after bouncing around between different marketing agencies and being an art director and creative director at different capacities, in-house agency, I eventually landed at a company called Formula Folios, which was my first foray into financial services. It was a turnkey asset management platform, TAMP, which you guys are very familiar with. And just a very serendipitous, finding. I applied for a job and joined as a designer, and very quickly built a great relationship with Jason Wink, the CEO at Formula Folios. Started to head up the entire marketing department, and we hired out a marketing team, a dev team, had a really awesome team of creatives that helped financial advisors build brands and market their businesses. It was part of our value offering at Formula Folios, which again, a TAMP, just kind of offering a full service offering to advisors. And then from there, Jason started Altruist. He had the opportunity to go up to LA. I think that was one of the stipulations from the venture capital was, hey, go to LA. There's good talent there. He invited me. I joined as the first team member as the head of design. Design was still my passion. It's probably one of my favorite things to do, but very quickly realized that my work was going more and more into marketing, brand messaging. Eventually I was promoted to VP of brand and design. But the early work at Altruist is what I'm most proud of, and really started, my reputation within this niche of the world. And that's building the first iteration of the Altruist brand. Of course, I had a great support system. Jason was a brilliant, people don't always know this about him, but beyond being a really good CEO, he's a phenomenal marketer. He did all this on his own in the early days. I learned so much about copywriting from him and messaging and talking about financial services and value propositions around this industry, what matters to financial advisors. So I was very fortunate to have an amazing mentor that kind of taught me the industry, the ins and outs of what would really ultimately become our core focus at Objective Brand when I left Altruist and started my own firm, which that was always the dream, is to run my own business, work directly with clients with, in this case, mostly financial advisors. We also have fintech clients and we have an estate planning client. Generally speaking, though, it's all finance related. So Objective Brand was founded in 2022. I founded it while I was traveling the country in a conversion van. Besides wanting to start my own business and work directly with companies, it was also just hard to be a VP at a fast-growing tech startup while you're traveling the country. So it offered me that flexibility in my schedule. And since then, it's grown a lot. We have 7 team members now. Soon we'll have 8. It's myself, creative direction, all things marketing, design, messaging, brand strategy. I have a head of ops, 2 designers, a copywriter, brand strategy lead, and a performance marketing lead. So our core focus is brand, messaging, websites, making everything beautiful, but also we are unique in that we do both. We do the initial build and making it amazing. But we have a very talented marketing team, so we're full service for our clients and ongoing support of cultivating that brand over time. So that's a long-winded intro. Hopefully, cover most of it.
Actually learned from that because I think your early calls where you're introducing yourself were with Zach and not me. So I actually enjoyed hearing the early story. That was great. So we want to start with the basics because I want to make sure we kind of lay the foundation here for the rest of the conversation. So just about brand, which I think even for me, sometimes when I think about brand, so much goes into that. So, when I think of it, I think of every single touch point because that's what's really creating that brand. So the launch is just the first step almost. So maybe you could talk about just for you spend so much time and energy throughout your career, but also now thinking about brand and how to bring a brand to life. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about what it means to you.
Yeah, good question. I'd say the way I like to think about it is it's a conversation with your audience. To your point around, there's so many different touch points. There's not one, your website doesn't define your brand. Your logo doesn't define your brand. Every interaction you have with your audience, whether it's a future client user or an existing user or client, it all feeds into your brand reputation, how people feel about you, how people talk about you when you're not there. All these types of things, ultimately, it's creating a perception. So, a lot of brands put a ton of time and effort into the small details, the customer service, and communicate their value proposition, their onboarding for users and clients. All those small things and interactions, again, feed into that reputation and how people feel, which ultimately creates a conversation about you. Again, when you're not there, that's how you create a viral effect. If you're creating an amazing experience at every interaction, then the people you're working with, communicating with, will talk about you when you're not there. And that's the viral effect of brand. So without spending $1, you can put a lot of time and effort into your brand.
Kelsey, maybe this is jumping ahead in the line of questioning, but those points are making me think about, Kelsey, you sent an article to me the other day about just sort of the power of art and good design and how much that alone can communicate and get people sort of bought into, what you are, who you are as a business. So John, I'm curious, on one hand, you need to convey to your customers, us included, that aesthetic and that feel is actually critically important, right? It can convey so much without even any copy. Or any of those other sort of components of what would create that conversation, as you call it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you do need all of that other stuff, if that makes sense, right? It's like the art and design, which is your background, can alone be extremely compelling. And I think maybe this is where firms kind of don't fully bring it to life, where it's they just want that beautiful website, which is great. It may start a conversation, but it's not necessarily going to continue it. So how do you kind of frame up that dichotomy, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the best brands, all of these things click together in unison. You have beautiful aesthetic, you have a sound strategy with a clear message and value proposition. You have consistency in messaging, you have automation, all the things that go into good marketing as well feed into that brand. But to your point, yeah, I mean, ultimately, visual aesthetic is critical. It can take all those other things and kind of fill in the gaps and make it a lot easier of a conversation and a transition into what your vision is. It also helps show us what can be. It's aspirational. It's like, wow, I want that. I want to be that. It helps us deliver on our promises and the vision that we were setting forth. So yeah, that's one of our value propositions that I would say as well. I mean, ultimately, a lot of times, no matter how deep we get into strategy, messaging, discovery, people just want stuff to look really fucking good. Like, damn, I want that thing. I mean, you look at the price people will pay for these high end brands for shoes and handbags and you name it. The same with like Apple products. I mean, there's so many amazing electronic companies out there, but they've built this amazing brand that people just want to be a part of. And a huge part of that, again, to your point, is the aesthetic. Did I answer your question at all, or am I just rambling?
No,
For
that's
aesthetic?
it, and that's it. And maybe we tie it back to how that applies for advisory firm users. But like even us, I found you because your website is beautiful, and I knew your work. What you did at Altruist is really compelling. But what started it is like when you go on that website, the objective website, Altruist's website, that's the jumping off point. Like I'm attracted to the aesthetic. Yeah. And then you double click and the story needs to continue, right? And obviously you guys back up the rest of it in your value prop and what you actually do to create brand. And so, for advisory firms, it's how do you do that? What's interesting too, and maybe you can speak to this, is there's so much opportunity to stand out. Like there's so much sameness in wealth tech. But for sure for traditional advisory firms, I mean, it's all the same stock photos and, before you even get to the copy and how you're laying out the messaging. So like the opportunity to have a brand look and feel that is compelling is vast. Like, to stand out is not hard. And then you can really stand out if you do it right.
Can I add one thing to that? So one of the things that I have been thinking a lot about since we started working with you, John, so you just mentioned some of like the big brands that people pay, way more. You get a purse from a specific brand and it's like so much more than a purse from Target, right? And like, what does that mean? Target's a recognizable brand too. It's not that they don't have a brand. It just means something else. So there's this interesting thing I've been thinking about, which is like how you guys worked with us and kind of crystallizing this, like, what is different and really making it based off something true, but then turning it into this aspirational thing that could be something that could continue on as we grow as a business, that I think is a really interesting, like, zoom in, zoom out thing where it's like, what's true as of today? What's like the kernel? It reminds me of like strategy almost, where it's like broad business strategy. Like, what is the kernel of the truth here? What is the core problem? What is the core thing that we need to hurdle over? And then we're expanding out from there. So like, I'm really curious with what Zach just said, this sea of sameness. This has come up on our podcast so many times. Like guests have brought up this sea of sameness in the industry, and it's like oceans and it's like, like blues and green. Like it's like a very consistent.
I think creativity.
Yeah. And so I'm really curious, like when you do work with wealth management firms, is it the same approach that you took with us, like a tech company where we do have like a really big aspirational thing? Are you still drilling down into like what's true? What is that kernel of something true that is different and unique and then expanding from there? Or is there ever other ways to kind of approach it where you're like starting with aspirational, even if it's not true as of today? Like would that ever be
It's a great question. Yeah, it's somewhere in between. I mean, there's and I feel bad for the industry. They're not doing themselves, advisors, doing themselves or giving themselves enough credit. The people we talk to are so unique and special and have amazing stories. I think part of it's just what's always been done. So they're running up against this wall of this is what's expected. This is what people want from me. And part of it is just a lack of confidence, probably. It's not their specialty. It's a difficult thing to wrap their heads around and be vulnerable and show their personality. And then there's a line to walk to, of course, because a lot of the people we work with are at this inflection point of they've been running their businesses for a long time on their own and they're known as the business, but they want to expand and it needs to be more than their story. So helping companies bridge that gap between the individual story and this future vision of the company is part of what we do as well. But to answer your question, it all starts absolutely in finding that kernel, defining it. What's that unique thing about you and your business and what you want to achieve? We haven't worked with a business yet that doesn't have something that's specific and unique to them. Everybody's got it. You just need to spend the time and effort to think through that, how to position it. And that's where experts come in to help you formulate that thought and say it in a way that makes sense, is clear, and that people care about. And then the other half of that, yes, there is some, I don't like to call it like being untruthful. It's showing what you are aspiring to be. It's, this is what my goal is. This is what we believe, and this is what we're moving toward. That's a message and a brand that people want to be a part of. It's part of branding. Is creating that intrigue, that interest, that community, and ultimately followers. Since we've been talking about Altruist, it's a great example. In the early days of Altruist, we didn't have anything yet. There wasn't a product. You had funding from a great venture capital partner and an awesome vision from Jason. So we had to take that vision and mold it into a message that got people interested and built a following. And ultimately, no matter what Altruist put out, by a certain point, there was a core following because of that vision and that message that we put forward.
Yeah, it's so important because with the attract repel thing, like the people you end up talking to through whatever you're putting out in the world and attracting are the people who will inform what you build as well and how you change over time. So there's like this cyclical
Yeah,
thing that happens that if the message you're putting out, I run into firms all the time who want to work with a certain customer, but they're not actually anywhere indicating that they want to work with that customer, but then they're driving their decisions on tech and services and all this stuff on whomever is in their book right now, even though they're not all their ideal customers. So it's a really interesting thing.
Even when it's disconnected from that kernel of that unique thing that all these firms, so John, what you were just saying, like Kelsey and I experience every day. And you said something earlier about like advisors don't give themselves enough credit. You mentioned Jason is a great example of like, yeah, he's a great marketer. Like people in the business know what the value is of an advisor and they know what their unique approach to it is and what that aspiration looks like. But the translation of that is so hard, right? And they don't give themselves the credit of like, if you just get John in the room, you can work through that problem, right? So it sounds like you're not surprised that these firms actually have it. They just need you to, and that, the process you took with us to bring it to life. It's always there. So that's, I think, encouraging for advisors to hopefully hear. Like, you do have it. You very likely do have it. It's just bringing it to life.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and it's work that thankfully a lot of it can be done on your own with the right I guess guidance. You're looking at examples of good brains that you appreciate and looking at the things that they're doing and that they're saying. How do we translate that to you? I mean, do the discovery, do the thinking, and it certainly helps to have a professional, but that early legwork, we're helping facilitate that conversation as professionals. Ultimately, it's still you. It's your content. It's your story.
Yeah.
So on that note, like, I'm curious what you would recommend, because we're kind of talking about like some more scrappy things that you could do, like without spending a ton, maybe before you work with an objective brand. What can a firm be doing if they just want to kind of make a better like brand impression, or if they just want to kind of do a refresh as a starting point and just get a little bit of momentum? What would you recommend?
So thinking about this, you gave me some previous questions, and I think one of those specific questions is, hey, if they have a limited budget, where do you start? What's the first thing that you do? Actually, I think I have a contrary view than usual. I think a lot of people would say, well, what I just said, you can do that early messaging, thinking, what's your positioning, who are you talking to? And to some extent, that's kind of table stakes, but all of that will fall on deaf ears if you have a terribly unprofessional website, brand, messaging system, nobody will care what it says. Again, they'll just look right past it because it doesn't look like you have your shit together, for lack of a better term. So I would say,
Mhm.
one of the simplest things you can do is tightening up your image, making it look consistent and professional and clean. Is all the way down to just getting rid of typos and errors and things functioning properly on the web. And your LinkedIn profile doesn't look like you just learned how to use technology. You put time and effort into writing a bio and a professional headshot. These are all things that can be done with very minimal funds and very minimal work, actually. It's just spending the time and effort to get it done. Then you have that baseline. Okay, this is a professional. He or she takes what they do seriously. I'm interested in potentially starting a conversation.
Yeah, that's a good point because spanning across other forms of social media as well. This is not like going back to the original point of this is all these different touch points. It's not just your website. So I've run into companies before where there is a misalignment between like what the founder is saying
Yeah.
publicly versus like the core brand, or like even like if you're on LinkedIn, like comments, people who are following you can see the things that you comment, can see the things that you are liking and sharing, and that could be a prospect. And is it aligned with what you're saying? So I do think that's an interesting way to look at it. I guess like a different question or a different way of asking this question is like, what are some of the
Mm,
biggest mistakes, I guess? Like, where would you be wasting money if you have a bit of money? Like if you have a little budget and you're like, I'm going to go spend this. So like, that's the way to spend it. But what do you see
yeah, yeah,
folks doing wrong, I guess,
yeah.
if they're in
Another
those
good
early
question. And I
stages?
hesitate to bring this up, but I would say if you have, let's just attribute real dollars to this. If you have $20,000 or less, I would be concerned about the professionals that you're getting at that price point. At that price point, you might want to start looking into templates. I mean, eh, to get a really customized, good, whether it's website or identity system, that's expensive. This stuff costs a lot of money. And if you have a limited budget, think more about getting templates that are tasteful, that have already thought through a lot of the big problems that you're trying to solve for, how you position a services page, for example. This has all been done, whether it's on like a Squarespace or Webflow or Wix or whatever website you want to use. Caveat being, don't buy a templated or prepackaged identity like logo. But even that, I mean, the right resources can get you a lot further with a limited budget. That like at least starting points for you. And then finding professionals. There's a website. I don't know if you want to get this granular, but I use a website called Upwork to find freelancers. Go there. You can get affordable professionals. Give them a very specific brief. This is what I'm looking to accomplish. Here's my starting point. And then once you have, greater capital to spend, then you start looking into finding a partner that can truly give it the time and effort that it deserves. And you're not building something that you might want to rework in a year or two anyway.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that does answer it. I was just curious because I'm sure there's a ton of missteps that people take early on. Because I do think there's kind of a split. Maybe it's not a split, but it feels like a split to me where there's founders like Zach is obsessed with brand. He is like the type of founder who for years has been wanting to do a brand refresh and is very focused on like the visual and all that. And then I run into founders who are like, nope, that's a waste of money. I don't care. Like I just want to do my work. I want to deliver the services. Referrals will come in, so there's kind of like this split of like, it
Yeah,
kind of feels
yeah,
like some people have like a deep respect and then some people don't. And there's probably like a nice middle ground of like, yeah, you should be investing in
yeah,
this and you
yeah,
should be thinking about it as early as you can, but in what order, what step, like how
yeah,
do you
yeah.
actually approach
And
it early on?
this is a little bit of
Um,
a off topic, but whenever I hear about the people who don't care at all, and I always like to position it, because yeah, I think they do somewhere in between, but yeah, I mean, there are brands that succeed with terrible brands that look awful, that have awful messaging, but they have a really good product
mhm.
or service, and it gains traction in some way. But the question is it possible to succeed without a good brand? It's, are you setting yourself up for success? Could you move much faster, easier, with less effort if you had a really quality brand? And the answer is likely everything will be easier if you have a strong brand and message.
Yeah, it's like an amplifier, basically. Like it's like, yeah, whatever's already working, it's going to make it work
Yes,
better,
correct.
faster, do more. That's great. I feel like we should talk about seeds really quick because we totally skipped over the part where we were going to talk about our rebrand. So selfishly, we should go there. But Zach, do you want to share a little bit, maybe first before John talks about it, about kind of like why we were even approaching a rebrand? Like, why did we? I know you mentioned
Yeah.
why we went with objective brand, but why we
Well,
were
and I
looking
think
at
the
a
last
rebrand to begin
comments
with.
are a good segue into it because I think the wrong brand identity can not just not move you faster, but can actually take away, right? It can cause confusion. And where, we're trying to start a conversation, as you said at the beginning, and if that it's like a ship in the ocean, if that conversation starts the wrong way, then you're fighting against misconceptions. And by the way, I just realized I'm also still using Seeds Investor.
You are all in on the old
So we
brand.
just had to make the full point of
Wow.
where I'm hanging it all up at the end of this episode. And by the way, I do need to get the new logo on the thing behind me. We shifted what we are as a product a bit and expanding the vision around deeply understanding investors in a human, multidimensional way and translating that understanding into more personalized portfolios and experiences and conversations around those portfolios. The beginning, though, sort of the first version of that was centered around understanding values. And so the brand identity has always intentionally, unintentionally conveyed that, right? I think Seeds in the name itself has always conveyed sort of that values-based investing concept, even though ironically, that is actually not why we named the company Seeds. Even though that's sort of where the product started. The premise around Seeds has always been that deeper understanding is the sort of seed of the relationship between the advisor and client. If that understanding is off the mark, then tree's not going to grow, versus if it's right, you have that deeper understanding, you plant the right seed, that evolves into that deeper relationship. But anyway, in the name, in the color, in how we were messaging, everything within the sort of brand conversation, Kelsey and I have talked about, being at conferences and having the backdrop behind us, and what that perception is just from foot traffic is, you're starting from a assumption that maybe not where we're trying to start the conversation. So that's been the idea of this is where we've been headed. How do we make sure we're actually starting the conversation the right way? And that's why I found you and started the process.
Yeah, so that's like a sign, definitely, that something's off, as if people are misunderstanding you from the get-go. And being an early stage startup is the perfect place to see this happen, because you are iterating and learning very early about what the problem is and all that stuff. So it's slightly different from like an advisor's business. But maybe, John, you could use Seeds as an example to just kind of like hit home some like a little bit about your process and how you would go about addressing those issues that Zach just described for a customer.
Yeah. So the conversation is start with process more so than specifically Seeds and what we did.
We can use Seeds as an example, maybe for example, like when you first met with Zach and then you took a look at how we were presenting ourselves through our old brand, what stood out to you? Because I remember my first call with you, you were like, yeah, this is a huge opportunity.
Absolutely.
We could totally we could totally change it. So like, what were you thinking as like a brand design brain person?
Your brand and website did not at all do your team justice. The reason I was very interested when I first met with you, Zach and eventually Kelsey and others, is such a talented, bright team. You're clearly building something very cool and exciting, and your brand just felt like this is any other product anywhere. Sorry to dish on your existing work, but it also was confusing. I mean, it's called Seeds. There's a leaf. It's all green. The first indication is that this is an environmental company of some sort. So right away, message to market mismatch. And then the website tried very hard to dive right into it. This is what Seeds is and how we do it. And it's a lot to take in for a user, especially me coming in as somebody who had no idea what you do. I was trying to wrap my head around it. It took several conversations before it started to finally click. But all that doesn't need to happen. A good brand simplifies that. It starts, we're big believers of start with why. If you're starting with the what, it's right away, it's uninspiring. People will start to read and maybe it's exactly what they need and they'll talk to you. But if it's not, then they're gone. They don't care. It's too much information, too much text. But if you start with an inspirational, visionary statement, this is what we believe. This is why we would believe it. This is how we're getting there. That conversation needs to happen. And then from there, you start to get more and more fidelity as you get down in the funnel. Here's who we are and what we stand for. Okay, now we have this audience of people. We're in the space of the type of people we want to talk to. One level deeper. Here's what it is. Another level deeper. Here's how it works. And eventually that conversation turns into a user, hopefully. But again, if you try to do all that at once, you just repel people, that they become uninterested. So that's what we did with Seeds. We spent a lot of time in discovery to understand what the vision is. And I think we hit a really good spot. And, if people are watching this, hopefully they can see the brand live now and get excited about it.
Yeah, we're so excited. I've been saying internally, because we're recording this before it goes live, but we are itching to get it out there because it feels like such a better representation. And it has been those early years of just kind of riding the old brand out and being how long can we take this before we have to officially draw the line in the sand and say this is the vision, we're moving forward. We have to kind of shed this old version of what this was, from the beginning. So it's really exciting. I'm curious because you met with a lot of folks internally, but you also met with customers. So using, and I think that's part of your standard process to talk to people who are actually in that ideal customer persona. So for using Seeds as an example, kind of how do you find that click moment? Or with Seeds, I guess, how did you find it? Or how did you reach that point? Is it through just continuing to dive deeper and deeper and then zooming back out? And how much of it does need to be validated by customers or people who are familiar with the existing team, product, service?
But Seeds is a little bit unique in that it's a much bigger value proposition than financial advice. Yes, it can be complicated, but ultimately it's a straightforward service. We're helping you with your financial life. The Seeds value proposition is multifaceted, multi-layered. So it did take some time and effort to fully get it. But it's not as complex. Once you do get it, now there's a way to package that in a very simplified way. Ultimately, Seeds is helping financial advisors serve clients better and grow their businesses better because they're providing a better service. Now, what does that mean? What are the pieces that feed into that? That's the conversation that we continue to have. But yeah, so there isn't necessarily a click moment.
Basically, the customer piece. So, how much is validation from people who are in the customer base or those familiar with the brand outside of the company versus how much is driven by the vision or the inspiration of the people in the company?
It's a little bit of both. I think oftentimes founders and people inside the company have blinders on and they don't fully understand how people see them or how they're communicating, how it's falling on their audience. But a lot of times, customers and users, they don't know what they want or need either. They're following your lead. You have the vision, you have the product or service. So there's a fine line to walk between leading a horse to water and also just the discovery and bringing to life what's already there. So with Seeds, what really struck me too, going back to the original identity, is the lack of humanity in it. And, that's what I found when talking to we found when talking to your users and your team. The personalities are great. The people love the company, the vision, what you're building. None of that came through with the website. It was so fact-based and there's I think the homepage didn't have one face on it. It was all, UI and text. Ultimately, people connect with other people. People hire people. It doesn't matter what business you're in. People matter. It's critical to everything we do. So the more we can bring that humanity to life, the better. And that was one of the most interesting things that I found, or biggest opportunities in talking to the Seeds team and your users.
I know we're going to run out of time here in a sec, John, but that just made me think of maybe a specific question to tie back to advisory firms. That people piece So this sounds egotistical, but like, yeah, to your point, we hope people connect with us, right? We hope our identity and how we view the world and what we're trying to accomplish personally through this business actually resonates through the brand and to people who hopefully, sign up for the platform. But with financial advisors, arguably they can be that much more part of the brand identity. Like the identity is them to a certain degree. And I'm sure it varies, but it's interesting as Kelsey and I have had discussions in our advisor growth series. It's interesting to see how much their identity and the brand identity is really tethered together. So I'm curious, in your work with advisors, do you see that consistently? Like the more we kind of lean into, you're the face of this, these customers like you, want to work with you. We need to convey all the sort of service value prop stuff, but it's also like we want them to want to hire you, and how you're kind of pulling that through the brand.
Yeah, that's a good question. There's this is a complex one, and my view has changed over time. I think there's this push, especially within the advisor community, to separate their personal identity from the brand because they want this thing to excel without them. If they're not there, they can't be part of every conversation. I get it. I'm a big Jim Collins fan and scaling businesses. I understand the thinking, but that doesn't mean we take you out of the equation. That just means that you're not a part of every conversation. You're setting up a team that aligned with your vision and your values and your way you're providing service, and they can replicate that. But again, you're still the visionary. You're the face of the company. Think of some of the best companies in the world. The CEOs, the founders are so part of that story and that message. And that's in part what people are buying into. So you can have the best of both worlds. You can still be a part of growing the top level brand positioning, vision, and ultimately loyalty to the brand, but also create a system that works for you when you're not there and helps you expand and scale your business.
I know Kelsey could take, yeah.
You know where I'm going to go with this.
Remember,
No, I have to plug my growth guide because this is one of the exercises. I'm not a branding expert, but I am pretty good at getting things moving early on and more of a generalist. And this is something I talk about with advisors all the time, which is the difference between understanding what clients value about you and making that transferable to your firm while maintaining that connection publicly and that, like that special thing about you. Still put that message out there because that's what works. But how do you actually operationalize this magical things about you? And that's where so many advisors get stuck because they don't even know what makes that come through to their clients. They haven't actually, it's so natural to them. They haven't actually sat down and broken it down, broken it apart and said, well, these are probably like the 5 core things they're getting from me personally. How does that build into a team so that I can go publicly confidently say, this is what my firm is about, and then deliver it as I get bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's like this is one of my favorite topics is like the intersection between that experience delivery and that service delivery. And as you grow, like continuing to keep that human special thing at the front stage. I can't write the copy or do the design or do anything, but I know that piece of that founder-led growth.
And the copy and design, that is only as good as the foundation behind it. And the things that we just talked about, advisors can figure that out by asking. I mean, it's amazing how little advisors will ask their clients, what do you like about me? What's resonating? Why did you hire me? Sending out a survey is so simple. That's something I learned that, working in the product world, it's so valuable to building something that matters, that people want more of. And it costs nothing to ask.
Yeah, that's so true. It's so rare that we had Tom Riemann on, and he has the whole NPS piece. But not even going that far, but literally just asking somebody is so simple, and it gets overlooked so frequently. And when you're so close to it, you think these things are obvious. Like you think that you totally get why people value you and why they pay you and why they keep showing up and why they refer people to you, but you might not. Even I was surprised by some of the feedback, and I'm probably the closest to our customers at this point in Seeds. I've been here and worked with them for some of them for years now in the early stages. And even I was reading what you guys pulled together and I was like, oh, I should have just clarified that that's the thing that you like, or that's the thing that you find special about working with our team.
And also asking what people
you.
don't like. It's the hard question as well. People, if they are still your client and they hired you for a reason, they're rooting for you. It doesn't hurt to ask, what suggestions do you have for improvement? What could we be doing better? This helps us improve. If you position it like that, you'll get really authentic, helpful answers.
By the way, I think maybe we could, like, that is such a good starting point, tangible takeaway of, even if you're thinking about, am I going to try to do sort of a phase one of this myself? Am I going to go hire an objective brand? Ask your customers how they perceive you, because it's so obvious, right? That really any type of firm is just self-identifying. This is my value proposition, so this is how I should go communicate it. And those things may be wildly misaligned, which is not a bad thing inherently, right? Like, your customers hopefully value you for some reason, but understanding what that is, so you don't start a brand around a misconception, right? You base it around, the real world impact hopefully you're having with customers.
Yeah. Any other quick tips before we kind of let listeners find out where you are, where to find you? Like, any other little quick tips like that would be a tactical takeaway, or anything to kind of help someone who's listening, who's considering a brand refresh, know, okay, yes, I should invest in this, or I should explore this.
Yeah,
Like, what would you
good
say?
question. I'm just looking at some notes. Yeah, I mean, defining your why and your vision, it's kind of becoming this like, a lot of people who are in this space have probably heard it a lot and are maybe tired of hearing it, but it's a thing for a reason. It does matter. People buy why you do what you do, not what you do. There are thousands and thousands of financial advisors to choose from. Why should anybody choose you over the next person? So just writing. I mean, I would take the time to. I wrote an ebook when I launched Objective Brand that has a guide with some of this stuff. If you reach out to me, I'm happy to send it to you for free. The seeds, clearly, hey, you guys some resources out there as well. But putting in the legwork and defining what you stand for, asking your audience for feedback. That's some of the easy, free stuff that you can do. And then from there, depending on your capital, if you don't have much, again, look for good templates that are at least in this realm of what you're trying to accomplish. Hire somebody to customize it for your brand. That'll be a lot more affordable and get you further than trying to build custom from the ground up with limited resources. I think you'll get something that's kind of half-assed because of working with a tight budget. Again, you'll probably want to redo it in a year or two to save until you can truly do it the right way with a professional with vetted work. And by the way, when hiring somebody, of course, look at their portfolio. If they have good work and you want something like that, then it's amazing how often we talk to people and we get into it and they're asking for something that's so different than our portfolio. I'm like, did you look at our work? I mean, this is what we hired us for.
Yeah.
And then, testimonials, if they don't have any, ask for testimonials or references that you can call. It's not rude. It's a good agency. If an agency is providing good value, then they will have customers that will sing their praises and they can put them in front of you. Don't go in blind. I mean, one of the worst things you can do is hire a firm without any sort of referral or reputation online, any testimonials. Do your due diligence and make sure that you're putting your dollars in a vetted company.
Yeah, those are great tips. Thank you. And we did check your references before we worked with you, and they were good.
Heard it here
So
first.
if anyone's looking for someone, heard it here first. I already checked the references. So John, where can listeners find you and your team? What's the best way to connect?
Objectivebrand.com is our website. We typically, if you're interested in working with us, reach out. We can have a conversation. We usually book new projects 6 months out. So again, we have a full service ongoing partnership model. But we only enter into that after we've done the rebrand, rebuild, whatever you want to call it. And then follow me on LinkedIn. I'm active, so I'll talk to you.
John, this was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing the insights. We appreciate obviously all the work you've done for us. We're excited, as we talked about, to get it live. That we're recording this several weeks ahead of that. So looking forward to watching this back. People can come find us when this is live at our new website, www.useseeds.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see everybody next time.